I don't really know how to begin this, because every time I try to explain it in a simple way, it never feels like it captures what actually happens. On paper, it sounds like I'm just talking about period pain, but that's never really been what it is for me. It's been nights when I've sat on the edge of my bed at 3 a.m. trying to decide if I need to go to the hospital again, or if I should just try to endure it one more hour. It's been mornings where I've woken up already exhausted, already in pain, before I've even fully opened my eyes properly. It's been moments where I've been in the shower holding onto the wall because standing upright felt like too much. And it's been days where I've had to cancel everything I cared about just to lie still and try not to cry too loudly. If you are watching this because you're going through something familiar, I want you to know I understand what it feels like when your life becomes shaped around something you cannot control. I am still not officially diagnosed with endometriosis, but what I experience every month does not feel uncertain or imaginary. It feels physical, overwhelming, and consistent in a way that has slowly taken over parts of my life without me fully realizing how much until I looked back. I got my period when I was 14, and I remember very clearly how normal it felt in the beginning, because I had nothing else to compare it to. I would go to school as usual, even on days when I felt uncomfortable, and I would sit through lessons with a hot water bottle in my mind more than in my hands. Sometimes I would feel cramping that made me slow down a bit, but I could still function, still laugh with my friends, still focus on normal teenage things. I would take painkillers and feel them work, and that made everything feel manageable. Like something temporary that I just had to deal with every month. There were even times when I didn't need medication at all, and I remember thinking that meant I was probably lucky compared to others. I never questioned it deeply because everything I had been told was that periods hurt, and that was simply part of being a girl. There was no alarm in my head at that stage. No feeling that something was wrong or building underneath the surface. It was just a monthly inconvenience that I learned to live around without really thinking about it. Looking back now, that version of my life feels almost distant, like it belonged to someone who hadn't yet learned what pain could turn into. Everything started to change slowly, almost in a way that was easy to ignore at first. I was around 17 or 18 when I started noticing that something felt different, but even then I couldn't clearly define it. It wasn't one dramatic moment. It was a gradual increase in intensity that made me second-guess myself constantly. One month the pain would be slightly sharper than before. The next month it would last longer, and then suddenly I realised I was starting to dread the nights before my period even began. I remember one specific night when I woke up suddenly from the pain that felt sharp and deep, like my entire lower body had tightened all at once. I sat up in bed, confused at first, trying to figure out if I was dreaming or if this was actually happening. Within half an hour, it happened again, and then again, like waves that kept pulling me back into wakefulness, no matter how exhausted I was. I remember turning on the light and just sitting there, trying to breathe through it, feeling both awake and completely detached from my own body at the same time. The silence of the room made it worse because there was nothing to distract me from what I was feeling. I started crying, not because I chose to, but because my body was reacting without asking me. And then the nausea started to build on top of it. That heavy, sick feeling that makes it hard to even sit still comfortably. I would sometimes lean over the side of the bed just trying to stop myself from vomiting, waiting for the next wave to hit, not knowing how many more there would be that night. There were mornings when I would wake up already in pain before I had even fully processed that I was awake. It felt like my body didn't give me a moment of peace between sleep and awareness. I would lie there for a few seconds, trying to assess how bad it was before deciding if I could stand up or not. Some days I would try to get ready for the day and end up sitting on the floor halfway through brushing my hair because standing felt too difficult. There were times when I would try to eat something simple, like toast, and realise halfway through that I felt too nauseous to continue. So I would just leave it and go back to bed. And on the worst days, I would stay completely still for hours because any movement made everything worse. I started learning how to predict what kind of day it would be based on how my body felt in the first 10 minutes after waking up. That kind of awareness is exhausting because it means you are constantly scanning yourself for signs of pain before your day has even begun. Even simple things like showering became complicated because standing under hot water would sometimes make me feel dizzy, so I would rush through it just to get it over with. As time went on, the unpredictability of it became one of the hardest parts to deal with. There were months when I would think maybe it wouldn't be as bad this time, and I would make plans with friends or agree to go out, only to end up cancelling last minute because the pain would suddenly escalate without warning. I remember one specific time when I had planned to meet someone and I spent the entire morning trying to convince myself I could manage it, but my body felt like it was already shutting down. Eventually, I had to cancel, and I remember the feeling that came with that decision more than anything else. It wasn't just disappointment, it was guilt laid on top of physical pain, and then frustration with myself for not being able to do something so simple. That pattern started repeating itself more and more often until I stopped planning things in advance altogether. I began to live in a kind of uncertainty where I would only agree to do things on the day, depending on how I felt when I woke up. And even then, there was no guarantee I would actually make it. I went to the doctor multiple times because deep down I knew this didn't feel like something I could just ignore. I would sit in waiting rooms, trying to organise my thoughts, rehearsing how I would explain it so they would understand how serious it was. I changed my GP surgeries because each time I left feeling like I hadn't been properly heard. I would describe waking up in pain, the inability to function, and the way it disrupted my sleep, and I would try to be as clear as possible so they would understand it wasn't just mild discomfort. But the responses felt repetitive in a way that started to make me doubt myself. I was told it was normal period pain. I was told to take paracetamol, and I was told I was just sensitive. And after hearing that enough times, you start questioning your own judgment, even when your body is clearly telling you something is wrong. At one point, the pain became so overwhelming that I called an ambulance multiple times because I genuinely thought something serious must be happening inside me. I remember waiting for help, thinking that surely this time it would be taken seriously, but each time I was told it wasn't severe enough. Even in A&E, I was sent away with stronger painkillers, but no real answers. I remember sitting outside afterwards trying to process how something that felt so intense inside my body could be dismissed so easily outside of it. There was one moment when I finally felt like something might change. My GP told me I was being referred to a gynecologist. I remember that moment so clearly because it was the first time I felt a sense of relief in a long time. I cried when I heard it because I thought maybe this meant someone finally believed me, or at least that I would get some kind of explanation. I was told I was due to call by a certain date, and I held on to that information tightly because it gave me hope that things might start to improve. I would think about this in the days leading up to it, imagining what it would be like to finally have answers even if they weren't perfect. But when the date arrived, there was nothing. No call, no update, just silence. I eventually called them myself, expecting there to be a simple explanation or a rescheduled appointment. But instead, I was told the waiting time was 12 to 18 months. I remember the way that felt, like something inside me had just gone completely still, because in that moment I realised I wasn't just waiting for help. I was expected to continue living in pain while waiting for it. And I cried afterwards, not because of one single thing, but because everything I had been holding all together emotionally just collapsed at once. Over time, I started noticing how much this had changed the shape of my life. I stopped making plans the way I used to, because I already knew there was a high chance I would have to cancel them. I began avoiding situations where I would feel guilty for letting people down, which slowly led me to isolating myself more than I realized. My friendships changed and then disappeared because I was no longer consistently present in the same way I used to be. I would go through periods of being social and then suddenly disappear for days when the pain hit. That inconsistency made me feel disconnected from people, even when they were still there. And emotionally, I started carrying a consistent background anxiety. Always waiting for the next episode, always aware that my body could switch at any moment. Even on good days, there was a part of me that couldn't fully relax because I knew it wouldn't necessarily last. That feeling slowly became normal, even though it shouldn't have been. I don't know what the future holds for me, and I don't know how long it will take before I get real answers or proper treatments. But I do know that I'm not staying silent about it anymore, because silence is part of what made this so isolating in the first place. And if you're watching this and you recognize yourself in any part of this story, I want you to hear me clearly when I say this. You are not overreacting. You are not imagining your pain, and you are not alone in it. Even if you have been dismissed, even if you have been told it is normal, even if you have been made to feel like it is not serious enough to matter, your experience is still real, and it still deserves attention, care, and understanding. My story is still ongoing, and I'm still living it every month, still learning how to navigate it, still waiting for answers that I don't yet have.
So tell me everything is
But I
not
am no longer
about
willing
me.
to pretend
But what
that
if
it
it
is
is?
nothing, because it has been everything to me in ways I am only just beginning to fully understand.